Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about the Blue Ocean Boost. And the Blue Ocean Boost to me is actually, it can be a really quick way of making some extra profit, money straight to the bottom line, if you think about it in the right way. And I talked about it briefly earlier, but essentially what we're talking about is, in the world of business, there is the red ocean. The red ocean is where everyone is. So if you're an accountant, for example, every accountant is talking about how they do their, they'll do your tax return, they'll do your payroll, they'll deliver a personalized service, they'll give you some business coaching. But that is very much red ocean. It's bloody ocean, because every accountant is saying the same thing. Same with a lot of financial advisors, same with a lot of all sorts of different industries. And it's when we can find a unique path, something that makes us different, that we can either offer something much more powerful and new to our existing clients, and we can immediately add a new row to the profit statement, or we can bring in a type of client that we wouldn't normally have sought and make that a very profitable part of the business. Now, I mentioned the Blue Ocean strategy book. One of the most interesting examples that it features in that book is Cirque du Soleil. So anybody here been to see Cirque du Soleil? Yeah, okay, brilliant. So Cirque du Soleil is amazing. I would not find my way going off and going to a normal circus, because I did when I was a kid, but I couldn't ever see that being a thing now. I do enjoy going to the theatre. So what did Cirque du Soleil do? Well, Cirque du Soleil took the world of the circus and put it in a proper theatre environment, made it a professional show, and allowed people to spend, you could go and see the circus when it comes to town. I don't know what it would cost, but we'd be talking 10, 20 pounds, I would guess. Or you can pay £100+ to go see Cirque du Soleil, where you see a circus that is as good as it gets, but in a professional environment. I went the first time I saw Cirque du Soleil, I've seen it twice. We saw it at the Royal Albert Hall. Somewhat different to a tent out on the Rutland showground. And they created a blue ocean for themselves, because the circus was not doing what Cirque du Soleil were doing. They took that circus environment, put it in a theatre environment, and they had they had no competitors, nothing else like it. Will Smith, I mentioned Will Smith, his book earlier on. Will Smith was trying to make it as a successful actor, whilst also, he actually started as a rap star, but trying to make it as an actor, doing Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he was competing at the time with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Tom Cruise. And yet Will Smith actually got to becoming the best paid Hollywood actor of his time. And he did that because not only did he create amazing movies, but he took his music and put them into those movies, like, if you remember, Men in Black and Aladdin later on. He took his music, and then often what he was doing was he was promoting the films more than any other actor was doing. Arnold Schwarzenegger in his book talks about how he promoted his films. Will Smith was going and doing gigs at the premieres to films. So you would go and see a live Will Smith gig as part of going to a premiere. And that just totally blew his competition away, because he brought in these different skills, but he brought in, therefore, different audiences to the film that he would have, he was creating. And I remember when, in the very early days of engaging with Dan Sullivan and David Batchelor and another coach of ours years ago, they started talking about Joseph Schumpeter. Now, Joseph Schumpeter coined the term creative destruction. And creative destruction is essentially this process of, it's ultimately, it could be capitalism. But if we want the business world to get better and better, it's got to be at the cost of something that has gone before it. Something that is not as good is replaced by something that is better. And creative destruction is this concept that we're trying to find always in business, because every time we come up with a new idea, like Cirque du Soleil, we're basically saying, right, this is a better version of a circus. This is a more ethical version of a circus. This is a more commercial version of a circus. We are going to be trying to destroy the concept of the circus by developing Cirque du Soleil. That's what we're trying to do in business. And I mean, I've seen loads of examples of this. I'm going to pick some around professional services, some outside of that. There's loads of ways that people successfully create blue oceans for themselves. So this is a guy called David Back. If you work in the finance world, you've probably heard of David Back. He famously wrote a book called The Automatic Millionaire. Within that book was a concept called the latte factor. So essentially, instead of buying your latte every day, you saved that £3 or $3 or whatever it was into your savings account. And by the time you hit retirement, you'd saved £1 million through not having a latte at Starbucks every day. It's a great concept. But he ended up making far more money out of book sales and seminars than he ever made giving financial advice, because he created a blue ocean for himself. He created his own unique framework, or the framework formula, as we've talked about in the Trusted Team and helped you guys build your framework formula. He positioned himself as the expert by writing a book about it. And then through that, he's totally bypassed the financial services sector. He actually wouldn't even need to be regulated. I don't know whether he is. I don't know. I assume he's not anymore because he wouldn't give any advice. So he's totally bypassed his industry, and yet he's created something far more successful, far more profitable. Not only that, he's also, not only has he created something entirely different, a blue ocean, he's brought in a whole load of clients that weren't profitable clients for financial advisors. So as a financial advisor, somebody comes in and says, I want to save £3 a day into my pension. You're like, it's lovely that you're going to do that. I suggest you just pick one and then come back to me when you've saved up a decent amount of money to seek advice. Because otherwise, you can't charge somebody £1,000 to give them advice for £3 a day worth of savings. It's going to totally destroy their savings, isn't it? So he's brought in a whole new customer because he's gone at it from a very different approach. And there's loads of examples of this in business. I remember when I was growing up, I had we went from the BBC Electron, and then we started on PCs. And PCs, it was like, right, are you buying an Apple computer or are you buying an IBM? They were the only two that existed in my world when I was sort of 15, 16. And IBM seemed to be winning the battle for quite a weird period of time. Don't recall seeing an IBM computer anytime recently. But actually, that's because they found a new blue ocean. They left. I think they make computers. I've certainly not seen one for a very long time. But they make way more money now in consultancy and that side of their business than the product side. That's where they saw their blue ocean, and that's what's made them more profitable. In your world, Steve, PwC did exactly the same thing. They were kind of coming from a more audit and accountancy background. Again, they've made much more money as a result of the consultancy side of that business now than they have in the traditional business that they got into, because they found a blue ocean. Now, you'd argue that blue ocean has now become a red ocean because you've got Deloitte, KPMG, Accenture, all doing the same sort of thing with slightly different guises. But an example I can give you of how we did this at Efficient Portfolio was, we were obviously at Efficient Portfolio, we were giving advice on people's retirement planning, their inheritance tax planning, that sort of stuff, from a financial advice point of view. But we realized that actually most high street solicitors didn't do wills and trusts very well. Obviously, great firms like Roy Thorns have proper private client lawyers that do this well. But the average high street lawyer does not do this well. And so what we decided to do was we started working with a company called Solidus Independent Estate Planning. They provided us with solutions, package solutions for different client scenarios, all drafted by solicitors, all certified by solicitors. But instead of saying to the client, well, trundle off down the road, get a will from so-and-so, cost you a couple of £100, and then them coming back, go, well, yeah, I got a will, but they didn't do, my estate's worth 10 million and they've given me a £200 will to solve my tax problems, which would repeatedly happen. We said, well, okay, we can actually provide you this package solution. Fees ranged from about £1,000 up to about £10,000 worth of fee planning. The financial services was still the most profitable bit for us. But if each client could add an extra between £1,000 and £10,000 in fees by doing estate planning, they're getting a better service and solution, and we're getting a boost, a blue income boost. But not only that, what happens is, because we're doing this, we bring a whole different catchment group into our client remit. So clients that are predominantly thinking, actually, I need to sort out my estate plan, are coming to us. And then, oh, and by the way, you do financial planning as well? Oh, that's great. We'll do that too. And in fact, the reason that that business exists is because the founder of it owns a financial planning business, and he markets their business as a will and trust business. And then they do the financial planning. So the financial planning now becomes second to the wills and trusts, even though if you know him, he would be a financial advisor. So it's an example of how you can look for different things, different avenues that can serve your existing clients as an income bolt-on and a value bolt-on, or you can bring in new clients of a totally different catchment. And one way you might want to think about this, so for those of you that have been in the trusted team a while, we took you, or if you did the 3 steps to entrepreneurial happiness, the online workshop, then we talked you through a concept called the partnership playbook. So the partnership playbook is a marketing concept. It's about finding strategic partners like the other people in this room, and finding people that have the same ideal clients as you that aren't in competition with you. Because if you build those strategic relationships, you find that you can be sending clients to each other, and you're eliminating your marketing. But there's a flip side to the partnership playbook. The guy I used to work with years and years ago, a guy who was a director of Positive Solutions when I first was giving financial advice, recently got in contact about a piece of software called RQ. And I think this could be amazing for everyone that works in professional services within this room, which I know is the majority, not all of you. So the partnership playbook is about, how do I get leads from other professionals that I can, grow my business through. But the RQ platform is the reverse of that. It's how can you monetize your clients when you refer them to other people. Now, we've done this in financial services. We've talked about this before, Mike. So traditionally, when financial advisors work with accountants and solicitors, what happens is accountants say, I want a share of fees because I'm an accountant, I deal with money, and I want a share of the money. And solicitors go, I don't want a share of the money. The regulatory ramifications are such a pain in the backside. I'll just give you the client, and just we're happy with that. But actually, that's because the compliance side of it is a nightmare. So what RQ is brilliant at is saying, well, for example, Kenny, I'm guessing, I don't know whether you work with accountants, solicitors or not, but certainly when we worked as financial advisors, we would pay the people that referred leads into us, but we never bothered setting up agreements the opposite way. So when we sent a lead to the accountant or the solicitor, that we'd get paid for it, because we always knew that the flow would be more in the other direction. But actually, this is a great platform for doing that too. From an accountant and solicitor point of view, this is all signed off. So there's a pop-up here that you can just see at the top saying ICAEW have signed this approach off, but so have the Law Society, so have, what's the other, ACCA? Is that the other accountant one? Other than, yeah, okay, ACCA, yeah. And so if you follow this process, it's guaranteed to be compliant with your regulator. But not only that, you can build up a panel of people in there, and you can be on other people's panels, including firms that you don't even know. So this is a way of generating leads for you. But the reason I'm mentioning it now is you can go on there, you can build your panel of, right, these are the 3 solicitors I want to work with, these are the 3 accountants I want to work with. And every time I come to refer one of my clients onto an accountant, I can put it into this system. It does it automatically. It covers the regulatory stuff automatically. It even gets feedback from the client, so you can see who's doing a good job with your clients versus who's doing a less good job. Gives you all the tracking in terms of fees. But the other really powerful thing is, so for a firm like Roy Thorne's, which is a huge firm, it has a bolt-on that you can put your client data into, and it will identify the clients. So, if you've got 1 million clients, it might identify 10,000 that need a financial advisor. 10,000 that need an accountant. So immediately you go, well, okay, we've now created this amazing panel, ping, 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 all done. I think it's really brilliant at professionalizing what because I mean, we've had joint venture for companies set up with accountancy practices in the past, which is a good way of doing it from a regulatory point of view, but it's a pain in the backside. Writing letters to clients to ask for permission to contain fees and all that sort of stuff, it's a pain. This will do all of that for you. And also your regulator will go, oh, you're using RQ. Fine, that's compliant. I think it's really good. If you want an introduction to the guys that are doing RQ, let me know and I'll make an introduction. I think it's really, really brilliant. So that is one example of how you can flip the partnership playbook on its head and go, well, actually, I can monetize this in another way. I've got these existing clients. Some of them need different services. I can fire those off to this through RQ. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to think like Netflix thought. So Netflix, if you remember, was originally sending out DVDs for you to watch, sending them out in the post. They also bought a company in the UK whose name escapes me that was doing the same thing. Love Film, thank you. In some ways, I preferred that because I think what you watched was sometimes better. But anyway, they tried to sell Netflix to Blockbuster for a relatively small amount of money. And Blockbuster said, we're Blockbuster. Thanks, but no thanks. We'll eat you for breakfast. Well, Netflix went on to streaming. Netflix ate Blockbuster for breakfast. Not brilliant. Blockbuster does not exist anymore. Have any of you seen the new film on Prime, Bezos? A worse film for acting and directing, I think you'll struggle to find.
It's pushed myself through because I thought the end would be great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
But the story around the underlying story is great.
Yeah, but you could have done it in 10 minutes.
Well, you could have done it in 10 minutes, or you could read one of the books. Honestly, how Jeff Bezos lets that be on his platform, I just could not believe. It's awful. But I stuck, again, like you, through to the end because the story is actually a brilliant story. It really is a compelling story. But Amazon did exactly this. If you watch that film, I mean, Amazon did a whole load of things. They were the first company to use .com as their name. They were the world's largest bookstore, but they didn't have one book in their possession because all they did was facilitate other people buying books from others. But the most interesting story of Amazon is Amazon Web Services. So they were the world's largest bookstore. Then they were the everything store, and yet they make far more money delivering Amazon Web Services than they do from any of the things that we know them for. And that was a blue ocean for them. That was not their core business at all. So it's about thinking outside the box. And ultimately, this is what Dyson did when he created the vacuum cleaner. You know, he thought, well, I'm seeing this, I know we've talked about this before, I'm seeing this vacuum in the wood mill sucking up all the wood chippings from cutting up the wood. I've hoovered, and I know the problem with hoovering, and particularly if you hoover up a hot cinder and suddenly the hoover bag's on fire, that's not a good situation to be in. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for different ways of doing things, than our competitors, so that we stand out. Now, there's lots of ways that we can do that. One interesting way that I picked up on, and I can't remember, there was a Diary of a CEO podcast or something, but sometimes that actually comes from creating friction rather than removing friction. So we're all taught that the best way in business is to remove friction. Amazon removes friction. One click buy. I mean, God, it's so easy to spend money on Amazon, isn't it? There's a parcel arrives almost every day at our house from Amazon because they remove friction. And if you think you're a high street shop and you're trying to compete with one click, I mean, that's why the high streets are like the high streets. But bizarrely, sometimes adding friction improves the process. So Betty's, Aunt Betty's Cakes, I think it's Aunt Betty, or Betty Crocker, thank you. Betty Crocker created an instant cake mix. And sales were remarkably low. And really, all you had to do was add water, pop it in, microwave, oven, whatever it was, probably must have been the oven in the 60s. And that was your cake. But people felt that they'd cheated their way to creating a cake. So they relaunched the cake mix, but where you had to add one egg. So you had to add egg and water. Exactly the same cake came out the other end. Sales skyrocketed. Adding that egg, creating that friction, meant that the home chef now felt that they had contributed to the process, and ultimately that's what got it to create success. And of course, that can be a real thing. It can also be a perception. So in the book, The Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett talks about he's had the same barber for 10 years. And he's getting his hair cut by this barber. And he gets to the end and he goes, "You've rushed this. You've cut my hair every month for the last 10 years. Some of you've rushed it." So he looks at his watch and he goes, "Same amount of time." Goes and looks in the mirror, goes, "As good a haircut as always. But it feels like you've rushed it." And he went, "Do you know what? It's the first time in 10 years I've forgotten to do my end of cut routine." "What's the end of cut routine?" He said, "Well, what I do is I just walk around, I look randomly at your hair, and then I go, oh," and I snip an invisible hair that doesn't exist. But that is his way of going, "This is perfect now." And he'd missed it once by accident, and Stephen Bartlett subconsciously picked up on the fact that he had rushed the process. And so sometimes it doesn't even have to be a thing. It's the theatre of the thing that creates it. And when you're coming up with new ideas, a couple of concepts that I really want to just cover, because we think when we come up with a new idea, we have to spend loads of money on doing it and loads of time inventing it and creating it and doing all of this amazing stuff to prove that it's going to work. But actually we don't. So The Lean Startup is a brilliant book. The most important concept within it, though, is the minimum viable product, which you can see here. The minimum viable product is about how can you get it to the point where you can just test it. So a young guy that's just finished Open School came to me a few months ago. So I've got this great concept. It's around NLP coaching and goal achievement, all of this sort of stuff. I said, "This is absolutely brilliant." I said, "What's it going to look like?" "It's an amazing app. It's going to coach you through this. It's going to do this." And I'm like, "This is brilliant. But that sounds like a huge amount of work. What's the minimum viable product?" And he said, we kind of spent a bit of time talking about it. He said, "Well, actually, I suppose it's me sitting down with 5 mates going, I'm going to coach you through this program. Can we see if it works for you?" The minimum viable product needed no technology, absolutely nothing. And it actually allowed him to get much better feedback, because what he's worked out, and this is why we do minimum viable products, is he worked out that some of the things that he thought were the most valuable weren't actually that valuable to his ideal client. And some of the things that he actually wasn't that bothered by were the most valuable things. So the minimum viable product is a great, when you've got any idea, you think, what is the easiest, simplest, cheapest, quickest way to test this? And if you do that, you can get it out, you can get it done, and then you can refine it from there. It's why we now all get these bloody beta versions of the app, and you're trying it and go, "Oh, that's a bug," but you never buy the first version of any Apple product. We were testing the new Apple, what's the new Apple VR headset called? Nitesh, you'll know the name.
I don't know, not Vision.
I had Vision in my head, but something. Anyway, I tried one at Abundance 360 in March. Absolutely incredible things. I mean, they are incredible. To be able to stand in a room and I'm like walking around looking at this 3D museum evolving with pterodactyls running around. Oh, it was just incredible. And then Sir David Attenborough commentating on what's going on. It's like incredible. But somebody actually said, Apple don't want you to buy this product yet. They only want developers to buy this product. They only want the proper technology industry to buy this product. They'll then develop solutions for it. And then the consumer version, you can buy it in the US, but the consumer ready version will be number 2. That's their minimum viable product. Another great idea, which I picked up from Kevin Priestley, the author of the Key Person of Influence and entrepreneur, Daniel Priestley, not Daniel Priestley. Kevin Priestley, somebody else, but Daniel Priestley. key person of influence. It's on this particular piece is on his interview on Diary of a CEO podcast. And it's the concept of the waiting list. So every time he comes up with a new idea, he creates a waiting list. And when that waiting list gets to a certain number of people, he goes, right, that's a good idea. I'm going to now do it. So that the example he uses in the podcast is he was thinking that he might create an AI tool to help you write a business book, because one of the things he talks about is helping you write a business book. So he did a post on LinkedIn with his waiting list, and he said, if I get 30 people telling me this is a good idea, it might be worth doing it. He got 300 people in the same time frame. He was like, wow, okay, that's a good idea. We'll do it. I just thought, what a great idea. Every time you've got an idea, put out a waiting list. Obviously, you've got to vary that based on, you've got to respect the size of the people that your reach. But what a brilliant idea of testing to see whether and what you then got is you've got an audience to keep feeding information to go, oh, good news, we're in launch stage. They'll do this with books nowadays. Mo Gawdat, who has written a few books that I think are amazing, is about to release or has just released his latest book. So, of course, he has a waiting list for the book. So he knows on the day when it goes live, a whole shed load of people automatically buy it because they've already paid for it. And it goes straight to the #1 bestseller list, and happy days. That causes him to get promoted.